The night on the western plains was silent except for the whispering wind brushing across the tall grass, carrying the scent of rain and earth. Jackson Cole, a rugged rancher with hands calloused from years of work and a heart scarred by loss, rode slowly back to his cabin after a long day mending fences. The sky was a deep canvas of midnight blue, stars scattered like pieces of broken glass, and the moon hung low, watching, waiting. He wasn't expecting company that night, especially not her. Lydia, the woman from the city who'd rented the old Miller place for the summer, seeking solitude, to find herself as she'd told him weeks ago when she first arrived in a dusty car and silk dress that didn't belong in these parts. She was trouble, he'd thought. Beautiful trouble with eyes that made a man forget his reasons. But he had kept his distance until tonight. As he approached the cabin, his horse neighed softly, ears twitching. There was light spilling from his window, faint and trembling. Jackson frowned. No one should have been inside. He pushed open the door and froze. There she was, sitting on his wooden floor, trembling, soaked from the storm outside. Her hair clung to her face, her breath uneven. "Lydia?" he asked, confused but cautious. She looked up, eyes wide, frightened and relieved. I didn't know where else to go," she whispered, her voice quivering like the flame of the lantern beside her. "There was someone outside my house. I ran. I saw your light." Jackson's jaw tightened as he glanced toward the window. The wind howled, but he knew that kind of fear in her voice. He knelt beside her, gently taking her hand. "You're safe here," he said. But she didn't seem to believe him. Her whole body shook as thunder rumbled across the valley. He poured her a cup of coffee, wrapped her in his blanket and sat beside her, the distance between them fading with each shared breath. The storm outside roared louder, but inside that small cabin, another kind of storm was building, silent, dangerous, undeniable. Lydia's eyes softened as they met his. "You always seem so calm," she said quietly, "like nothing can break you." Jackson gave a faint smile, one that never reached his eyes. "That's because I already broke once," he replied. "I just learned to hide the cracks." She didn't know what to say. For a long time they sat in silence, watching the flames dance in the fireplace. Then lightning flashed and she flinched. Instinctively he pulled her closer. Her heartbeat pounded against his chest, wild and fast. "It's just thunder," he murmured. "It can't hurt you." But when she looked up at him, eyes shimmering, her whisper cut through the air like lightning itself. "Don't stop," she breathed, voice trembling, pleading. Jackson froze. He misunderstood her words, his mind racing, his body tensing. He thought she meant the closeness, the warmth, the pull that had been growing between them since the night they first met. He leaned in, heart pounding, but before he could say a word, she suddenly gasped, "Jackson! Behind you!" He turned just as a shadow moved across the doorway. In a flash, he was on his feet, rifle in hand, storm forgotten. The door burst open, and a man staggered inside, mud-soaked, angry, holding a knife. Lydia screamed. "That's him!" she cried. Jackson didn't hesitate. He tackled the stranger, the two men crashing into the table, splintering wood and sending the lantern flying. Flames licked up the wall. Jackson fought with every ounce of strength he had, the smell of smoke and rain filling his lungs. The man swung wildly, the knife glinting in the light, grazing Jackson's arm, but rage and adrenaline drove him forward. With one last shove, he sent the intruder crashing into the wall, knocking him unconscious. Lydia rushed to his side, trembling as he pulled her close again. "You okay?" he asked, panting. She nodded weakly. "I didn't mean," she whispered, tears falling. "When I said don't stop, I meant don't stop holding me. Don't let me go." He smiled through the smoke. "I wasn't planning to." The flames crept higher, and he grabbed her hand. Together they ran into the storm, rain drenching them, washing away the fear, the danger, the misunderstanding. They watched from the hill as his cabin burned, but neither cared. Something new had ignited between them, something far stronger than fire. Hours later, as dawn broke, They sat wrapped in a single blanket beneath the cottonwoods. Lydia's head rested on his shoulder, her eyes finally calm. "You saved me," she murmured. "No," Jackson said softly, staring at the sunrise. "Maybe you saved me." For years he'd lived in silence, haunted by the ghosts of a past love lost to tragedy. But that night something shifted in him. Maybe it was her courage. Maybe it was her voice. Maybe it was the way she said his name like it meant something again. The rancher who once believed he had no reason to feel now had one. And Lydia, who came to the wild plains searching for herself, found something deeper. Home wasn't a place anymore. It was a person. Days turned to weeks, and as word spread about the fire, neighbors came to rebuild. Jackson's cabin rose again, stronger than before, and so did he. Lydia stayed. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Together they worked the land, shared laughter over coffee, and sometimes, when the wind grew quiet and stars blanketed the sky, she'd whisper those same words again, but this time with a smile that held no fear. "Don't stop," she'd say softly as he kissed her forehead. And he never did. Because sometimes the moments born out of misunderstanding lead us to the truths our hearts were too afraid to speak. That night had changed everything for both of them. What began as fear became love. What began as a whisper became a promise. And what began as an accident became destiny. The plains still whispered stories of storms and second chances, but none like theirs. The rancher, who rebuilt his heart from ashes, and the woman whose voice taught him how to live again. And maybe that's what life is about, finding the courage to stay when the world tells you to run, to believe in love even when it hurts, and to keep going when every part of you says stop. Because when you don't stop, when you keep holding on, something beautiful happens. You heal, you grow, you love again. And if you're hearing this now, maybe it's your turn too, to not stop, to keep believing, to keep chasing the sunrise after every storm. Because one day, your story might change everything, just like theirs. The morning sun crept through the ashes of what was once Jackson's cabin, painting the wet earth gold. Lydia stood quietly beside him, her hand brushing his. No words, just warmth. The storm had passed, but something inside them had shifted forever. Jackson's arm was bandaged, his eyes softer now, no longer shadowed by loneliness. Lydia turned to him and whispered, "I thought I'd lost myself out here, but maybe I was meant to find you." He looked at her, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Funny thing," he said. "I thought I'd stopped living until last. Night proved me wrong. The air smelled of new beginnings." Together they began rebuilding, one nail, one beam, one heartbeat at a time. Every laugh, every glance carried the promise of something real, something worth fighting for. That night hadn't just changed everything, it had awakened them both. And as dusk fell again, Lydia looked at him beneath the fading light and murmured, "Don't stop." Jackson smiled. "Never again."